Welcome to Keys to the Future. I'm your host, Gabby Coe. I've enjoyed a successful engineering career and want to inspire you to remain focused on your STEM education and career. Join me as I chat with amazing guests who are shaping the future and sharing their journeys to inspire yours. Ready to unlock your potential? Let's dive in. Our guest today is known as the drop-in CEO. Her superpower is lowering the temperature and elevating conversations with empathy, and patience. As a speaker, author, podcaster, and consultant, she teaches the C-suite leaders how to establish a lift, light, and lead environment and create calm amidst chaos or crisis. She is the author of the CEO Compass, your guide to get back on track, and hosts the Drop-in CEO podcast. She earned her bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. She enjoys her roles as a mom, wife, foodie, and world traveler, and is a medal curler, earning the 2017 Arena National Curling Silver Medal. Please welcome Deb Coviello. Deb, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise with the Keys to the Future community.
Gabby, I am just grateful for the opportunity to share my insights, because if at least one person can be inspired to do the work that they're supposed to do, I'm eternally grateful. So again, thank you again for having me on.
Absolutely. So before we dive into today's conversation, Deb, could you share a bit about your journey? What inspired you to focus on leadership and become the drop-in CEO?
Okay, so we're going to go there. It's interesting. I will say at my heart, and I think this is important for your listeners, who am I as a person? And I truly am a creative. I've always been a creative. When I was young, I used to sing, dance, do arts and crafts, write, act, all of that stuff. And it was very interesting. Went into then the education system. I was a pretty smart kid, always my parents trying to keep me challenged. But along the way, it was very interesting. My educational interest then kind of transitioned into science and math. I later, went on to get a degree in biomedical engineering from Rensselaer, and then followed what was at the time the right thing to do. It was a very good job market back then. I went into quality engineering and operational excellence in multiple industries. But it was one of those things, I don't know what it is. I like to speak up, maybe the sound of my voice. I was often chose for leadership positions because I had a can-do, results-driven attitude. So when you kind of stand out, you become somewhat of a leader or the person chosen for special projects. Fast forward, moved up into higher levels of responsibility, moving eventually into the flavors and fragrance industry, all within manufacturing. And I got to a place of leadership. I was the head of quality for North America. I had people reporting directly to me and people in the plants. Now, up until this point, I was a can-do, results-oriented person. I could do it myself. Now, I was at a place where I was not the smartest person in the room. I did not have all the answers. I had to elevate the capability of my people who were smarter than me and realize that I couldn't lead the same way because I wasn't getting the results I wanted. I was actually in last place globally when I took on that role. And I realized I needed to lead differently. And so fast forward, it was a time of reflection on what then do I need to do as a leader in order to help my people. And when I say help my people, I didn't want them working 12, 14-hour days. How could I help them do the work, struggle less, and spend more time with their people? This became a core value to me. And so I eventually became the leader that I think I am now by unleashing their potential, so they could do the best work that they could, be recognized for it, and ultimately, when you close their gaps in their capability, we achieve the results. We move from number 4 to number 2 in about 18 months. And I felt so proud of that work. But I'll pause because that's a little bit of insight about having an opinion, speaking up, being results oriented was kind of what got me then into leadership, and then a few more skills along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing that you mentioned that being creative, and nowadays we talk about STEAM as part of the STEM field, right? The arts part of STEAM, and then your path kind of started probably a different way than you had expected it with your undergrad degree and gotten into quality. But it sounds like you kept an open mind to kind of navigate different fields to apply your skills or the skills that you had learned. And because you spoke up in different settings, most likely, you were cited as a leader and somebody who could be tapped on to do other tasks or to take on other responsibilities. So I find that really amazing. You also mentioned helping people. You reflected as a leader, you helping people unleash their own power of knowledge and their own skills. I think that's very, very important. They said that the success of any good leader is the power of their team.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that I don't know how it came to be. Maybe it was the creativity part. And again, I want to share with your listeners that, if you had a passion, if you were good in the arts, if you were just uniquely good at something, but at the time when you were younger, you just could not apply it, or maybe there wasn't something practical, I want you to write those things down. I don't want you to lose sight of those creative things. One of the things that I was really good over time was not only was I a good communicator, but a deep listener. And again, for engineering and problem solving, you have to listen to kind of sort through the data. Again, a technical skill, but also a very creative one, because when you can listen deeply, you can see and hear people's gifts or their uncertainty. And one particular example, again, I was in the flavors industry where food safety is critical. I had an amazing leader who one day was giving a presentation about an important initiative. And it was so interesting how the impact that he made this day was so different than another. And one of the skills that I learned is about effective feedback. And this is one thing that your leaders and listeners have to think about is how do you request feedback and how do you actually get it? Because sometimes people will say, oh, you're doing just fine. What could you do with that? But when I said, Rick, I'm going to use his name. I said, how do you think today went? And he said, well, I think it was fine. I delivered the information. People seemed interested. I said, can I give you some feedback? And he says, absolutely. I said, one of the things is, I learned it from him. When you give feedback, there are three really special words. What should you start? What should you continue? Or what should you continue? What should you start? And what should you change? And I said, one of the things that you should continue to do is your zone of genius. You know food safety. You are articulate. Keep going with that. You are the go-to person. I said, what you might want to start doing is during this presentation, you stood up. And I wanted to let you know that versus sitting down, your energy was at a much higher level. And the impact of that were people leaning into you. You could see their body language leaning into you. So you definitely have their attention. Might I suggest, even if you're in your office giving a remote presentation, stand up because your energy is so much more impactful. And then, can I just mention something you might want to change? And he says, sure. And I says, well, I noticed that you were a little uncomfortable. Your hands were kind of moving all over the place. You were maybe touching your pocket or something like that. It maybe wasn't noticed by anybody, but detracted a little bit from the quality and the impact you were having. Might you consider maybe grounding yourself and having a pen in your hand just so that you had something to hold on to while you were in your zone of genius? Well, he really took all of that feedback and every bit of it was actionable, not just you're doing fine or keep going. And I will say that while he was my go-to food safety expert for North America, he became a sought out individual globally for his expertise so that I was able to shine a light on his gifts and lift him up so that he had more respect, he had more confidence, and his potential was unleashed.
Absolutely. I love that story because, like you just mentioned in the very beginning, some people may not be receptive to feedback. But I also think there's a thing about how you give that feedback. Because if you go at somebody and say, hey, you messed this up or whatever, instead of, hey, like you just mentioned, having that constructive criticism and feedback helps people understand, hey, I can definitely improve. And let me think about how I can, then it gives them that ownership. Let me think about how I can improve myself and take those steps that are required. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I would love to lean into this a little bit more. So often we haven't trained our leaders to be able to give feedback because in the narrative it can feel scary, or you don't want to offend or don't want confrontation, when really we need to take the position of we're here just to elevate everybody. But as a young professional, even if you're still in your school or early in your career, you own your destiny. You own your future. And what I would propose to you is, given maybe you only get a review once a year, maybe you just don't get feedback at all, you have the responsibility to ask people, say, hey, don't just say, how am I doing? Because somebody will either say you're doing fine or let me get back to you. And then it's crickets. Maybe they've never been trained in how to give feedback. So you could say, hey, I'm coming up on 3 months in this new job. I'd really love to know how I'm doing. If you could think of 3 things, could you tell me what I should continue doing? Because it's my zone of genius. And what might I even start doing to kind of enhance or elevate what I'm doing well? And if you saw anything that maybe detracted from what I'm doing, could you share that with me as well? Well, what you have done is controlled the conversation. You have given them 3 actionable questions to whoever is responsible for giving you feedback. And that's leadership. You're now starting to show leadership where maybe your leaders above you may not have all the essential skills. So think about that. You own your career. Think about how you can proactively ask for feedback and take positive action.
So that's a good segue to this next question that I had. You've talked about the concept of the CEO being a mindset. So I think about, that being like taking the ownership, like you mentioned. Hey, ask people and try and get tangible feedback, right? Thinking strategically and acting with a sense of purpose and vision in your own career. So how do you think professionals at all levels can adopt this mindset to grow their careers?
So I respect the fact that in some circumstances, some environments, and in some culture, there is hierarchy in an organization for which you have to respect, because people work hard for the roles that they're in, and there may be paths of sharing information or getting approval. So always be smart and understand the landscape that you're in. However, at the core, we are all humans. We are all part of this existence, and we are all trying to do our best for in service to ourselves, our community, our families, customers, etc. Just know at the core, we are equal. Now, given that mindset, you have the power to be able and should be able to express opinion. And sometimes it can be scary because you perceive that maybe you don't know how to articulate it in the right way. Think of yourself as the CEO of your domain. And when a CEO comes into an organization, their role is to assess what is good, what is not working, and where do we want to either elevate the good stuff or close gaps in what is not working. You're a smart person. If you've gone into the STEM profession, you can see things, and your opinion is valid. Now, you might want to vet it with somebody, talk to a mentor, talk to a colleague, just to kind of test out, I am seeing something that there's an opportunity here. And then you might want to practice, but I do suggest to you to be seen as a leader in an organization where maybe you haven't had enough years or experience. Your opinion matters. And you can say things like, I believe, I think, I see, I know, we should. Can we consider? These are powerful words. And I do suggest, if you're still like you believe that, write these things down. There's nothing wrong with going into a meeting and writing a few bullets and practicing. And even if you think your voice is shaky, your voice, your proposals, your ideas matter. And that's a CEO and that's a leadership, because if you can see things that others can't, that's what a CEO does. So it is about being a mindset. I have never been a CEO of a company in my entire life. Now, I am the founder of my own company. But when I drop into organizations and somebody's asked for help, I go in with looking at everything, not just what they asked me for. Very often it's quality or operations, but I will see safety issues. I will see efficiency errors. I will see ergonomic issues. And I will help that leader with what they think the issue is, but then I'll also provide my perspective, because just because a person is a CEO, they cannot be all knowing and all seeing. So if you come into a situation, a team, an organization, and you see something, speak up. You have a voice. That is your superpower. Be the CEO of your domain. And again, it's a mindset.
I love that. Be the CEO of your own domain. There's the saying, lead from where you are, right? And then you're sharing that by speaking up. You're sharing your knowledge. You're also sharing your opinion and your point of view, but you're also inviting others opinions and points of view. I think if you're open and transparent, so leading from where you are. And I really equate that to what you just said. Be the CEO of your own domain. You don't have to be a CEO of a company per se, right? By just owning that domain and where you are in that space, to open up the conversation, be open about your opinions, but also invite others to do the same.
And, it's interesting. We had a conversation last night at our curling club. We were talking about politics, and sometimes that can be uncomfortable, but there's a lesson learned from having tough conversations is you as maybe a young leader, maybe you have the opportunity to lead a team. You are trying to make a change. You're trying to move people forward and get some action items. You will have people that said, oh, we already tried that. Oh, that's not going to work. Oh, that's too expensive. And they may be experienced and authoritative in their way. I propose to you to rather than say, oh, okay, and just, okay, well, next action item, I suggest this is again a superpower suggestion for you. Say something instead like, oh, thank you for sharing that. Can you help me to understand why you have that position? Because others might allow themselves to be shut down in a conversation. But asking curious questions about, well, help me to understand why you believe that that's not going to work. Because maybe situations are changed. Give me that perspective. And you know what? By being curious and respecting the person and asking, why do they have that opinion? You open up the whole conversation for more dialogue. And you might say, oh, that's good to know. We'll know not to use that vendor again. But let's just say we get a different vendor. Is it possible to be able to try that process again? And what might we change? By asking questions and fostering conversation is leadership. Okay. So I just want people out there to just know, again, your voice needs to be heard and believe in what you say and make sure that you can help evolve conversations versus being shut down, because sometimes maybe people just know what they know and they are celebrated for their experience, but maybe nobody's asked them why. Think about it.
Love that. I love that. Invite the conversation in the space, the open space to elaborate the ideas, elaborate the concerns that we're having, right? So that then we can understand each other and come up with a solution for the problem, the issue, or whatever it is that we're conversing about. But I love that. Now, your book, The CEO's Compass, introduces a powerful framework for leadership. Could you walk us through what it means to align people, purpose, and process, and why it's a game changer for leaders?
Thank you for asking me that. The CEO's Compass was written from a place of my direct experience. And as a STEM professional, young professional, you learn certain tools. So as a young engineer, I was a quality and process improvement expert. You learn people, process, tools. Those are the levers that you can pull on to improve a process. And usually it's training people, it's putting a new piece of process or equipment in place and tools, et cetera. Well, I learned over time that can only get you so far. Again, I'm a Six Sigma black belt. I can solve problems with that. But what I have found is that when we think about solving problems only from a place of just people, process, and tools, we miss a lot of things. Now, I know as a leader, you need to think about ultimately where are we trying to go? Are we trying to maybe fix a process to get higher efficiency so we can save money? Yeah, but that's just a result. What I have found that is more sustainable and what leaders need to seek is peace of mind. Because when your operators or people that you're with are well trained, they understand the purpose, which is another compass point of where they're going. And you basically unleash their potential when you are a leader and say, yes, we need to get cost improvements, but ultimately we're doing this for our customers. We want to make sure that we're the best product, the best cost effective, because we want to be the favorite company that even if we have some issues, yes, we're going to have mistakes, they keep coming back. When customers say we are the favorite, maybe not the cheapest, maybe not the best quality, that's peace of mind. And that's true north on the compass. So I realized that was a greater purpose. Leaders need to be in pursuit of peace of mind or a greater outcome far beyond results. Now, there are two more compass points that I came up with that I found that are critical, and it is the West and the East compass point. And I call them past and pride. Do you see a trend here? Peace of
Mhm.
mind,
Yes.
performance, purpose, people, process, and platforms. But past and pride are the missing things that I saw in my career. Now, we had acquired a couple plants in North America in the manufacturing space, and they had great products, and we had to bring them onto our systems. But it was so much more than just bringing them onto our computer system so that we could start selling their products. I went to those plants and I realized two things. There was a reason why we took these people, we purchased these companies. It was because they were able to do things we couldn't, and it was because of the past, their deep culture. They were a small company, they were a can-do environment. Everybody had each other's back, everybody was resilient and turned on a dime. That was resiliency. It was an amazing culture, or past. I took the time to get to know their past. Pride is the other compass point that a lot of people don't think about. And this goes to sometimes you're a young professional dropping into a team with very much more mature or seasoned professional. We need to be curious and take some time to get to know them. And what was their intellectual property? What are they proud of? What is their pride? What did they invent 20 years ago before you were even going into high school or something? When we ask those questions, maybe we don't need that intellectual property now, but because we respected the person and were curious and took the time to get to know them, we acknowledged their pride, their intellectual property, which we need to preserve. Bring those leaders into the conversation because they have so much knowledge. We have shown respect. So, the compass. You don't have to fix everything when you're going into a project, but be very clear on what the outcome is of your team and make sure that everybody has the skills to know how to express their opinion, the processes for team dynamics. Again, I didn't talk about a test method or SOP or anything, but do the team have the process and the skills for collaborative conversation and taking action and having critical conversation? And then have we coached them and give them the platform or tools to develop new skills? So that's a slight difference on people, process, and platforms in the compass. It's not tangible, it's more about the people dynamics. So the CEO's compass as a whole is the guide for leaders, whether you're early career or later in your career, to look at the situation and say, where am I off track? Because maybe you only have to fix the past. You didn't understand the people that were coming into your group. And maybe we don't have good team dynamics, which is the process. Fix those two, and you'll start seeing the compass coming back to true north. So it is a guide, it is a tool for leaders. Even though I say it's the CEO's compass, any leader, regardless of where they're at in their journey, can use it.
Absolutely. You can use it in your own domain, right? If you're the CEO of your own domain, you could use that compass where you are and lead from where you are. I love that you mentioned learn about the past, because that's where a lot of teams can be, and you said pride, they have pride of ownership in what they have accomplished so far. So that's very important for that team. And if you don't take the time to learn about where they came from, then you may never be able to unleash their full potential power to in the future say, hey, I know that you guys, have this product or set of products that you've developed, but how can help me understand how we can take it into the next step and have that collaborative approach to bringing people along and collectively have that vision and arrive to
Yeah.
that vision.
And
I
so
really love that.
I will share I did not come to this wisdom so easily, because I will say, again, young professional out there, you are praised, celebrated for getting the answers right, hustling, doing 200%. And we program you to be that way. And so it is so easy for somebody to go into a meeting with their agenda. Boom, boom, boom. We got to get through this agenda. Well, that bit me in the rear end one time. Now, I was an up and coming leader, and I was sent to some professional leadership training. And one of the tasks they gave was to perform as a project manager. We were given a task and get that team through that task. And the interesting thing was then they changed it up. He said, okay, Deb, you were in room A. We're now going to put you in room B. You're going to solve the same problem, but you're now with a completely different team. So what I did was I went into that room. I quickly assessed the landscape. Where are we at in the planning? And I said, okay, let's go. And it was very interesting. One of the team members stopped participating and he folded his arms and just leaned back. But I was so focused on getting the results. When we debriefed that activity, I was given the opportunity to receive feedback. And somebody asked that team member, said, "Why were your arms folded and not participating?" And he said, "You shut me down." He said, "You came into the room very focused on solving this problem, but I didn't know you as a person. You didn't get the chance to get to know me, and I didn't know where you were coming from in your approach and your style in solving it. So I felt completely lost and shut down." So we need to be mindful that when we go into a team, and team dynamics can change, people can come and go. While we are celebrated for fast results, it is more critical to make sure you know each team member, their past, their experience, their talents, their gifts, and know how to leverage it, celebrate it, and bring it forward. And you maybe delay getting those results, but you have a stronger foundation because you were curious and you got to know people. And I will promise you, they will have your back. They will give you 200% because you took the time to take care of them and care about who they were. And they will help you get the results faster.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think all of the things that you've been saying kind of lead me to the next question, and you kind of been interweaving some of this along your feedback. But tell me more about that superpower, that lowering that temperature and elevating the conversations with empathy and patience. And nowadays, most recently, we have some examples that could have been a good tool to use. Can you tell us more?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot to this. Why do I enter situations and I appear calm, cool, and collect? Now, this is a quick side note here. Somebody, while I was still in my corporate role, said to me, "Deb, how do you do it when it is so crazy and we're urgent trying to solve a customer complaint or a production issue? You just sound so cool and collect."
Mhm.
So here's the thing. I absolutely hate chaos. I don't like when things are just crazy and you can't trust and you don't feel safe and there's uncertainty. It's something that I don't like. On the other hand, I am a disruptor. I go into organizations and change things. But when things are changing that I feel like I can't control, I use a little bit of my engineering training. When data is flying at you, the worst thing you could do is just react. And so you need to listen. As a problem solver, as a DMAIC methodology, Six Sigma, we are taught to collect data. And so what is that superpower? First, number one is deep listening. Listen to all the data. I'd also suggest, even though you might be a subject matter expert, speak last because people need to be heard. You need to ask everybody for their input. And what happens is then you get all this data just like a computer. And then you come forward, and this is what I do is I now have some clarity and say, I know everybody thinks that this is a customer complaint, but based on what I've heard and the data that you've provided me, it feels like this potentially is a supplier issue someplace else in this situation. And might we collect more data to understand, is it an operations issue or is it a supplier issue? And people's body energy starts calming down. One, because I provided perspective, I use concise words, no emotion, and I propose possibilities or I clearly stated the problem statement. I calm the people down. Now they realize, okay, now we've got some direction. So I've gone from a place of I absolutely hate chaos and all this flurry scurry and all this wasted energy to how can I come to a team to one, deeply listen to what everybody is saying and then come forward with clarity in a calm voice so that people can function again. That's leadership. But it also happens to be a superpower. I mean, I'm looking at you right now. We're having an amazing conversation, and I'm seeing qualities in you that maybe I hadn't seen before. You are deeply listening, you are taking deep notes.
So, welcome back to the podcast. We had a little bit of a technology glitch, and Deb, I'm so thankful that you're back with us. So, we were talking about your superpower, lowering the temperature and elevating the conversation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Again, I didn't set out to make that part of who I am, but when I'm faced with difficult situations, and this has happened time and time again in my career in manufacturing, being the quality professional, whenever there is a customer complaint or some kind of defect in the factory, they pull in the quality person to help lead the charge. But what I found over time was the fact that people hurry scurry. They come with their opinions, they come with their data, and sometimes it's very disruptive or non productive in the beginning. And one of the things you learn as part of Six Sigma and DMAIC methodology is properly formulating a problem statement. And when you can listen deeply and all the perspectives, when we think about the who, the what, the why, the how many, etc., it becomes a skill that quality professionals hone on. Oh, this is what I think the problem is. However, over time, going up in leadership and having to lead initiatives or major problems, I found that listening longer and getting all the input was critical before being the leader and extending my opinion first. And then I found that in slowing things down, in qualifying what the problem is, and getting everybody's body language nodding in harmony, and the way I deliver it in concise language and my tone of voice. I have had people come up to me and say, Deb, I really like the way you approach some of these chaos or these crisis meetings because somehow your voice is very soothing. And from there, we can start moving forward. And so I just got this knack for listening to all the input and then coming forth with what I think the issue is and setting the calm nature for the team to start doing the work. So that's one of my superpowers, deep listening, and then also being able to reframe and guide. So,
I love that. I love that because I mean, you had said before, cool and collected, deep listening, and allowing you to really frame the problem, understand the problem, because otherwise it's all going to stay in that chaotic situation that you have unless you can frame that problem
and the
at the
funny
very
thing
beginning.
is that as a quality person, part of my upbringing has been in standards and control and avoiding risk and conflict. So I'm
Mhm.
always seeking that. The interesting thing is that I'm also, as a leader, I come in and I disrupt things and I change things. So conversely, if I'm the disruptor, you also have to know how to present information in a way that makes sense. People understand where they're at in the change and how they can contribute and evolve and move forward. So, again, a calm demeanor, don't be the firefighter, is what's going to get people through the storming phase into a phase of performing a lot faster.
So I'm going to change gears a little bit. I was really impressed by, learning that you medaled in curling. And I'm really curious, how does this sport how's that affected your journey, your professional journey?
It's so interesting you asked that because when I was setting up my business, I knew I needed some kind of video on my website. And they say often, don't make it just about business, but also the personal side. And we're not two different people. You got your personal side and your business side. Really, if you're authentic, there is a thread that brings it all together. And when I was thinking about how I approach serving customers and clients, it's all about not me being the person that knows everything, but how can I lead differently? And when I think about curling, I actually had some video showing me working with a team, understanding what the strategy is, and then playing to each individual's skills and strengths to be able to get a successful outcome because there's all these variables. And I will tell you, I learned a valuable lesson early in my curling career where I was the captain of the team, or we call it a skip. And I actually put together a team from three different clubs in order to attend an event. And one of the things was in the beginning, I was asking for shots that some of the team members who were newer to the sport could not make. And my co captain, we call that the vice, took me aside and said, Deb, I said, I know you want to win. I said, but right now you're not playing to their strengths and they're getting discouraged and not performing. And ultimately, we want them to feel good about their contribution. So, with that little pep talk, I started calling shots that were within their skill set. They started feeling better about themselves. The communication got better. And actually, we made it to Sunday to the semifinals. So when we think about business and my love of curling, they're so interconnected. We bring together different personas, personalities. We have different ice conditions, different stone conditions. But as a leader, how can we go in and pull together all these pieces and leverage the strengths to get a particular outcome? So curling and business, it's very related.
I imagine curling to be a sport of precision and strategy and honing your skill, right? Just like you mentioned, you were honing the skills of your team,
Mhm.
but in doing so, you were also honing your skill as a leader
Yeah, it's not about winning all the time. And it's
all
funny
the
when I
time.
do go to these curling tournaments, which we call bonspiels, as we're driving or traveling to the event, we say, okay, what are the goals? And I remember at the last one I went to, we agreed we wanted to at least win 2 games. Usually you play at least 3 games at these events. And so we got to 2 wins and we were in the A event semifinals. We were like cruising along. And it was a really tough game, that third game. And I was getting a little bit stressed because in my mind, I wanted to keep going. But the team members came up to me while we're in that play and they said, Deb, we're good. We are safe. Nobody's gotten injured. We've won 2 games. We're having a great time. We're good. And that was the greater outcome of the team coming together and simply enjoying the sport together. And it wasn't about making it to the finals. So, again, we as leaders have to realize what's the greater outcome. It's not just necessarily about the tactical work or winning the game.
And with practice, we can all develop that precision and stay focused on the goal that you said, right? And how what are the steps that we need to take to get to that next step and to advance forward. I love that feedback. So for listeners that are starting their leadership journey, what advice do you wish that you had when you started out yourself?
There's so many pieces of advice. But
Yeah.
what I will say, while you are honing your technical craft, just know you have a voice. Speak up, learn how to position proposals or ask questions. Look at others and how they're doing and how they're influencing. But I also want you to think from a mindset perspective. We are all humans and we are all equals.
Mhm.
And I know in certain cultures or societies, there is hierarchy for which we have to respect and honor. But we're all equal at the end of the day. And if you have an idea, it is worth raising and you should be heard. And over time, we learn better ways to position it. But just know, mindset, you have a voice, speak up and use it.
I love it. Speak up, learn, and have that humility because we don't have all the answers. As leaders, we don't have all the answers. So admit when you don't know something and say, "Hey, I don't know that, but I'd like to learn." That's the other part of it.
And the reason why this is so important, because as I was coming up, I was a quality engineer and I spoke up amidst superiors about a particular situation. And I said, isn't that our decision on what are the qualifications? And in the context, in the moment, everybody went silent. I spoke my truth. That was what I was thinking. And
Mhm.
later, my boss took me aside and said simply, you shouldn't have said that. Okay, where's the coaching? What should I have said differently, or how could I have positioned my thoughts ahead of time so maybe we could have gone in with a unified front or an alternative? That's something you learn the hard way. But when I think about how can we navigate our careers, don't do it alone. I try to do it alone. I try to learn as quickly as I could by making mistakes, but having a coach or mentor will definitely make it easier.
So as we coming to the end of our conversation, Deb, let's just close it up with some rapid fire questions. What's a book that every leader should read? What do you think?
Oh, yeah, the the laws of power. I had a boss give that to me and realize that there are different types of power. You don't have to be tall, you don't have to be the loudest person in the room, but learn how to play power plays. What can put you in a position of power to influence and be heard?
Awesome. What's your to-go strategy to remain focused during a busy week?
Make a lot of lists. And when I have to hunker down, I do turn on music, which does focus and calm my brain so I can do the deep creative work and also picking the right time of day to be able to do your best work.
Yeah, time management. So, what's one quality every great leader must have?
Mm, Focus on the human first. It's not about the results. We get results by deeply understanding the human, getting to know something about them personal, getting to know what their gifts are and acknowledging it. You gain so much in terms of trust. So when you do need to do the tactical work, people have your back.
Dem, it's been such a pleasure having this conversation with you. Before we go, can you share with us where people can find your book and all the wonderful work that you do?
First of all, Gabby, it's been such a pleasure, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to talk to you and your audience. The easiest way is to go to my website, dropinceo.com, dropinceo.com. There you can find a little bit about me, my book, my podcast, and my amazing resources. And you can even connect with me there. I love just having a conversation and getting to know you. Again, it's about humanity, getting to know each other and seeing how we can serve each other. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Deb, for sharing your incredible insights with the Keys to the Future community.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Don't forget to follow Keys to the Future on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more inspiring stories and industry insights. Until then, keep innovating and stay curious.